Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find me at MEC Sharks and Twitter, Sheng_Peng, and Blue Sky, Sheng Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. Find me on Twitter at _hockey, on my website, half-hockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. It's Christmas. Happy Merry Christmas to everybody.
Happy holidays.
Merry
Christmas.
Holidays.
We can say that too.
Yeah. We are officially 1 day away. We are recording this. It's now the 24th on the East Coast, but
yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, it's the 23rd for me. As you can see, for once, we have a very cool background. I'm in Vancouver post-game.
Yeah, so Shang's just getting out of the game, and he's going to share with us all of the insights from the locker room after another, what is this, the fifth loss
in a row? Fifth in a row, yeah.
Really tight games in every single one of them, which we're going to talk about as well. But before then, Shang, who do we have on the podcast today later on in the segment?
Super exciting. We have Steven Ellis, Daily Faceoff. He's their draft prospects guru. He talks to us about Sam Dickinson, how real is his season, what that means for his NHL future. Talk a lot about Quentin Musty, what's going on with him, Brandon Swoboda, things like that. Now, keep in mind with Steven, we did record a few days before, so a little bit before final roster, but it's still an excellent preview. And also, too, follow Steven Ellis. He is going to be in Ottawa for World Juniors. So, anyway, follow him. He's a friend of the show. Love his work.
Yeah, we had him on last year. His insights were awesome, and he follows the games very, very closely. So if you're looking for, like, game-by-game breakdowns of who's done well, who had a good game, he always puts that stuff out right after. Yep. So it's one of the best sources during the World Juniors if you're not able to watch the games, just to see who's doing well. And I don't think much has changed because it's only been 5 days, I think, since we recorded with him.
Yeah, and he predicted Swoboda would make the team, Brandon Swoboda, Sharks prospect, and he was right.
Yeah, and Christian Kirsch, and so we get into a little bit of that later on. Before that, we're just going to have a little bit of a shorter segment this week. We have injury news. It's going to be our first topic. We have a couple of different injuries for the Sharks, including one that prompted a back-to-back Askarov starting in the NHL. We have some Zetterlund contract talks and gossip. We want to talk a little bit about Blackwood and why, just his play, and also because they played the Sharks, how he's fit in with the Avs and why we think it's a good fit for them. Finally, we're going to cover a little bit of the games, some player highlights, and then lastly, our sign-off segment. What do we want for Christmas for the Sharks? Obviously, I want a pony, but also there's other things that I want.
Who knows? Maybe Will Smith wants a pony.
He might. But we'll get into all of that and more on the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. That's a good intro. We should keep that one. We're not going to scrap that one, everybody. All right. Let's start with the two newest injuries, which would be William Eklund tonight and Jake Walman.
Also tonight.
What do we know about these two injuries?
Well, William, we know, was injured in the game. He took a big hit from Tyler Myers. Actually, right after that hit, he scored a goal.
Yeah.
But he left the game shortly thereafter. Ryan Warsofsky did confirm that he left the game because of the injury. So we can kind of guess what that is, but we don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. Worth noting that the Sharks do not practice again until December 27th. They're going to be on break completely until then. And so we may not get an update until the 27th when they play the Vegas Golden Knights, actually. Tomas Hertl coming to town for the first time as a member of the Golden Knights. But anyway, Jake Walman missed tonight's game with a lower body injury. And want to guess, though, don't know for sure, but want to guess that maybe both these injuries won't be super bad. We don't know about Eklund, but it's worth noting that I saw both Eklund and Walman. I saw Eklund after the game. Obviously, just the visual, whatever distance looked okay. Walman saw him working out actually before the game, so I don't get the sense that his injury is very, very serious. Ryan Warsofsky called Walman's injury day to day, and that's what it kind of looks like. Eklund, we really don't know because of kind of that hit and what happened. I would just guess that maybe he started feeling kind of not great after he scored that goal. But Anyway, though, I did want to add, though, so with these injuries, that hopefully, we hope that they're very, very short term. But I want to remind people that that's why it's important to have reporters out on the road that I can actually see these guys. I'm not looking for these guys. I'm not trying to sneak through the hallway or open doors, see if I can find William Eklund, but just kind of run into them after post game interviews and stuff, right? Or in the case of Walman, just in the morning skate, walking to the Sharks locker room, just see, hey, what's up, Jake?
Hey.
And anyway, I think that's important because if there are no reporters on the road, that we would not know the nature of these injuries because Ryan Warsofsky never has any updates post game.
Sure, it's always we'll see. Yeah,
it's always I haven't talked to the training staff yet.
Yeah.
So he's not great or doesn't have a lot of updates for us after the game, and so it's good that there's somebody there that can kind of see. Oh, hey, Jake is he's working out, so it's probably not that bad. Actually, you could go back to the last trip in Florida, and if you read my stories, that I saw Will Smith. We know he missed a week, right? But I saw him working out before, I think even before he was put on IR, and that doesn't mean that he's not injured or whatever, but it kind of tells you like, okay, it's not the worst. I didn't see Will Smith walking around in a boot. I didn't see Jake Walman walking around on crutches. You know what I mean, right? And so anyway, that's why it's important to have us out on the road. So anyway, I want to thank everybody that has contributed to the travel fund. I've traveled more than ever this year, in part, a lot of it because obviously the interest in Macklin Celebrini and kind of a resurgence of interest in the Sharks. So I want to thank everybody for that. And just want you to know once again that it is so meaningful. I guess I want to add one more note just because I'm on this tangent, that so many of the stories that I've come upon this season have been because you have sent me out on the road. Mike Greer, after the Mackenzie Blackwood trade, right? I told you that story last week. I was the only reporter there. So Mike talked to me. So that's exclusive for you guys, right? Yesterday, I went to the North Shore Winter Club. That's where Macklin Celebrini grew up, Connor Bedard too. And that's where they became great hockey players. And I was able to visit that club, take pictures, talk with a few of his youth coaches. And I put out a story today, The Making of Macklin Celebrini. Really love that story. Really enjoyed putting it together. Got some great pictures of North Shore Winter Club, also of Celebrini as a kid. And those are kind of stories that don't happen if I'm not on the road. Even the holiday inflatables comes out. They're on the road. I'm the first one there to be able to ask questions, annoying questions to Nico Sturm about his incredible rap and all that kind of stuff, right? And so there's so many things that it's been especially interesting this last, I guess, couple of weeks in particular. The road trips have been particularly eventful between the Blackwood trade and Macklin Celebrini coming home and William Eklund calling out the newspaper in Sweden and stuff like that. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody for sending me out here. And also too, I hope you can see in the stories that there is a good reason to send me out here, and that I hope that I'm repaying your trust in me, which I take very, 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 very seriously.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You get great stories, you get great content. It just takes a small donation or subscription or what have you to San Jose Hockey Now. So that's our plug for the holidays. That's a good one too. Should save that. We got to save the intro, save the plugs. Can replay them. Anyway,
I know what I want for Christmas: more subscriptions,
more
subscribers,
more subs. But yeah, they really have been super eventful road trips. It feels like every road trip there's a story there. Yeah. So, and it's also just a better Sharks team to be with on the roads.
Better
I
mood,
imagine. Better mood. And then Eklund's shot was amazing on that goal. I thought that was a fantastic shot, and I was a little surprised that he was out afterwards. But I understand, things could be a little delayed in terms of whatever symptoms he's feeling.
Right, if it is that, yeah.
But a hell of a shot. Just wanted to call that out there. Okay. Next injury is more of a long-term injury for Vitek Vanecek, who's been confirmed as week-to-week earlier this week, correct?
Yeah, and Friday? We haven't seen Vitek since the injury, so that kind of tells you something, right? Like Eklund, Walman just sort of run into them in a hallway. We have not seen Vanecek since the injury. Ryan Warsofsky says that after the holidays, we'll get a better sense of his timeline.
Sure.
And hopefully he's okay, man. I felt so bad for him, just his luck. This is a big season for him, obviously. He is a pending UFA. He's a veteran guy. He had bad injury luck last year, did not have a great year last year, but he's a guy that has a track record of being a good NHL goalie and just hasn't had a chance to kind of get on track here in San Jose. Did have that incredible game versus, I think it was the Kraken the Blue Jackets. And he had like a 49 save performance or something like that. So you can kind of see a little bit of what he can do. And there's obviously in San Jose, there is sort of I guess we'll lead into Yaroslav Askarov, who got called up, but Askarov is obviously the Sharks goaltender in the future. The Sharks need another goalie in there, and I think they need a 1B type too. Yeah. And a guy like Vanecek could be a good fit, but of course he's not getting a chance to play for at least a little while here.
I think this whole segment's probably just going to be about goalies. Because, Askarov came in and had a excellent performance in an overtime loss against Edmonton that just felt like it was, the world was on Askarov's shoulders in that game, which is great to see from
that game.
Yeah, great to see from like a rookie goaltender, though. You really like that kind of, your team is not playing well. They're playing against one of the best teams in the NHL, and he's giving you a chance to win that game.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this from Blackwood the last couple of years, right? That giving the team a chance on a night that they're really, really struggling.
Yeah, and he got rewarded. I didn't think that he would get a back-to-back start just because, I don't know, it feels like still weird to me to see Askarov starting. I don't know why, because he was tucked away for a while. We heard about him for such a long time. So, but it makes sense. You reward him for his good play, and there's an injury involved in that discussion as well. But yeah, give him back-to-back starts. I don't think it was. Yes, the Sharks lost tonight, but it made sense to still start Askarov, I think.
Yeah, certainly deserved it. He did look a little more human. Mm-hmm. I think that he was better even in the first couple games he played. Granted, St. Louis, he was responsible for the first goal there, but...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one.
his best play of the season, as he said. Yeah. But... he's going to have games like this too. Obviously, he's not going to be lights out every single game. I think, though, it does present a really interesting question because, and I think I've said this on the podcast, even when they had Blackwood, that people were telling me, I believe it, that he's already the best goalie in the Shark system, and that including the NHL. And so, wonder what value he has to stay in the AHL. Besides, obviously, the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. Thinking harder about it, yes, the Barracuda are a better defensive environment for him. But I was thinking just about like the Leon Draisaitl overtime game winner, right? And Askarov admitted that he was tricked on it. Yep. And that's kind of stuff that you only learn in AHL when you're facing a guy like Draisaitl. You're not going to face a guy like that likely in the AHL. So you don't get that kind of field experience against the very best in the world. And so I wonder if, again, that big question that, of course, I know all Sharks fans are pondering because everyone's excited to have Askarov here. We're not going to get into too much, I think, now because we have, well, for one thing, it is, let's give Keegan his props. It's almost 2 a.m. in the East Coast for him there. But also, too, that it's a bit larger topic. I want to have a goalie guy on the show to talk about it. But What does Askarov have to gain in the AHL? Because he is destined to go back there if Vanecek's injury, hopefully, is not too serious. And Georgiev is here, obviously, too. And again, let's not forget, everyone has consigned Georgiev to the scrap heap of goaltending in the league.
Sure.
I keep saying this. I'm always going to say this, that goaltending just turns on a dime so much. Again, look at Blackwood 2 years ago, scrap heap guy too. And so it can turn for Georgiev. He's had a lot of track record of success. Nice. So anyways,
he's doing really well in the AHL. Whenever he plays, he's playing not as amazingly as Askarov, but he's holding his own.
Sure. There's a reason why even the Avalanche anointed him the starter years ago. They signed him to a 3-year contract coming out of the Rangers, right? And they needed somebody that they thought could be the backbone of long playoff runs. He actually was very good in playoffs last year for them. So it didn't quite work out there for him. But anyway, Forgiev, all that stuff, right? I would assume. I think that he'll start to work himself out and rehab himself in San Jose. So anyway, the Sharks will have too many goalies once again once Vanecek gets healthy, hopefully soon. But then that's an interesting question though, because Askarov I think is the best goalie of the three.
Sure.
Not slighting Vanecek or Georgiev, but I think it's going to be a really interesting debate for us to have and to talk with somebody in a couple weeks here. So,
yeah, even tonight's goals, like you're not going to face the the shot power or the placement of Elias Pettersson on that like half wall shot,
right,
and
or
like
even that Sherwood shot.
the Sherwood shot. Yeah.
I like my view. Okay, it's Kiefer Sherwood. He shouldn't be doing that. But I talked with Kevin Woodley up here, and he's a Vancouver.
Yep.
He's a Vancouver guy. He covers the Canucks for NHL.com, but he's a big goaltending guy too. He's like the goaltending guy these days. And he was like, that was a phenomenal shot by Sherwood, and Sherwood's been doing that all season. I think Sherwood's up to 12 goals, so nice find for the Canucks there. So maybe that one, you don't really put on Askarov too much. Maybe that big rebound that he gives up on Pettersson's first goal, I think. But
kicked it out really far.
But though, wherever Askarov kicks that, there's a Canuck around too. So
and anyway. Also Askarov, like in the Edmonton game, that was the biggest takeaway, was that his rebound control. He kicks it into specific spots, and then he anticipates the next shot super well. He knows where he kicks it, and then is immediately set up for that shot. Mm-hmm. He actually was set up for that shot after he kicked it to the guy. Like he knew where he kicked it, and it was like, oh shit, the guy got it, and still set up for the shot. He just got beat, and so his just anticipation is super good with his rebound control. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I was really the most impressive sequence, I guess, was in the last game when he goes side to side on Pokolzin. I was like, I've not seen a Sharks goaltender do that ever, really, just to move side to side like that and cover so much space.
Yep.
That was, to me, that was jaw dropping. That little bit of move. Even I think he gave up a rebound there too, like you said. But just the ability to move like that. So, anyways, I think it is a worthy question if he's better. If it's better for him to be up here very soon, just because the AHL may not hold enough of a challenge for him. So anyway, let's save that for another conversation, but it's obviously a very, very good one to have.
Yeah, Askarov is sitting in in the AHL at 938 with 14 games this year, and then like last year was 44 games. He played 48 games the year before. He's played significant AHL minutes.
Right.
So yeah, we'll have another conversation about it and see. You're right. Like maybe he really just does need more NHL starts to. It's a development year for a lot of different players for the Sharks.
Right.
So I wouldn't be mad about it. I get super pumped whenever I watch Askarov on the Sharks.
Yeah, and I'll say too that the Sharks, there are nights like Edmonton, obviously, and with Blackwood, like in Florida, when Blackwood made 51 saves, where they're just awful.
Yeah.
and they need heroic performances, and that's a lot to put on a goalie. But other hand, sometimes goalies, they like to face a lot of shots. Yeah. But the Sharks defensively are better than last year. They're not a great defensive team, but it's a better environment to put a goalie into. Last year was radioactive all around. This year, it's sort of the fallout, like 200 years later after the bomb was dropped. And you kind of go outside. It's like the TV show Fallout. You kind of go outside, and it's just some weird shit, and it's not safe. But you can go outside, though.
You're still there. Yeah, you're not going to immediately burst into flames, I guess.
Yeah, last year you just burst into flames. So
yeah, it's like painting a good picture of the Sharks goaltending
and defensive environment. So.
Our next topic is the Zetterlund contract talks. We could also go to Blackwood, either one. What do you think?
Let's just talk Zetterlund just because we're there.
Change up for goalies.
Yeah, change up the goalie talk, and then with Zetterlund, San Jose Hockey Now, we broke that Zetterlund and the Sharks, they've begun contract talks. It makes a lot of sense. Zetterlund obviously led the Sharks with 24 goals last year. This year, a ton of credit to Fabian. He's kept up the same, actually a better goal scoring pace, or pretty close. And he's been taken off the top power play unit, not because of anything he did, but the Sharks are just deeper this year with Celebrini and Toffoli. And his production's the same in less minutes. And then also too, he's not on the first line anymore automatically. He's second, third line. And so, but productivity is the same. I think that it's not just obviously about the goal scoring, but he is a power winger. When he's at his best, he's playing a power game, driving the net. He's small, but he's built like a bowling ball. He's physical. He had his hatred of losing. You like that about him. He's not a guy that seems complacent or compliant with all the losing that's been going around him the last couple of years. He and William Eklund have kind of shown that, I think. Mikhail Granlund has kind of taken both under their wing, and I think when guys go to Mikhail Granlund and will learn from him, those are guys that I think you want to keep, because Mikhail's the kind of guy that I think you want to keep too. I don't know if the Sharks will, but that attitude of player, though, is a guy that you want on your team. And so, yeah, so it makes perfect sense. This was also another topic for another episode or for a story on the website. I need to dig deeper into it, but what kind of contract is befitting for a guy that looks like going to be a back-to-back 20-goal scorer, 25, right? Power winger type, not just a goal scorer type. He's got a little bit more dimension to that. So I want to see what makes sense for that. But talked with Fabian a little bit. He didn't want to give much about the contract talks, but he reiterated what he said earlier this year, that he does want to stay here, that he's happy here, that he wants to turn it around. And he's also obviously pumped about this season's progress. And so, yeah, it sounds like a good deal all around. He's kind of a perfect fit for where the Sharks are.
Yeah, he's a good stamp of the Mike Greer legacy. He's a Mike Greer-esque player acquired by Mike Greer in a big time trade from moving on from a big piece from the San Jose prior era. So yeah, it makes sense. Like you said, it's kind of a fit all the way around, and I love Fabian. I think he's been excellent fit here, and I love the chemistry with Eklund, and I want him to stick around. I do wonder. You worry about these next contracts. Like, he's been such a good value at $1.4 million for 2 years. Like, such a good value, and now you want him here, and he wants to be here. But what's a good number for him is kind of something that we should definitely dig into and see if we can come up with a fair estimate.
And I'm not sure yet, to be honest, if he is going to be like a core guy when you're contending for the cup.
Yeah.
But there's a chance he will be, and so he's going to get a chance here. I wouldn't give him anything too long. That's just my opinion. I don't know if I see that, where I'm sure this is a guy that you want in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. And that's no discredit to him. There's not a lot of guys that you want in the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. That's if you get to that point, then your career is made. But he's still young. He's 25. He can get to that point still. So something shorter term, I see would be a nice fit, and also give him a chance maybe to hit UFA in a couple of years and make big money, maybe. So that's how I see it. I know some fans may disagree. I know he's very popular, and maybe fans do want it back, and he's young enough for sure. You can give him a 5 or a 6 or something like that, but I like to see a little bit more myself. And of course, it may end up biting me in the ass, and you may have to give him more AAV in the future. So that's always the risk there. And also I give him full credit too, because that's the big question for him that I had at the beginning of the season was, could he kind of keep up the production?
Yeah.
Even with I projected, and it's true, it's become true that he would have significantly less playing time. And he's been able to keep up his production. He's been good in other areas. I know he cares. I know he's trying to get better. And so full credit to him. And, just a tease for a story I do have about Fabian coming out. Nico Sturm calls him Quadzilla.
Shit. That's really good.
I shouldn't have given that away, but that's hilarious. I love it. There's other good stuff too in that story too. So
might be better than the Swedish meatball, to be honest.
It might be. A Swedish meatball is a little bit derogatory. Let's be honest. But Quadzilla, there's nothing derogatory about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's
maybe
fair.
He was a Swedish meatball when the Sharks acquired him, and he went 0 for 22 games. But now he's Quadzilla.
Quadzilla. Yeah, I know you're right. That's a good name. Yeah, I mean, also credit to him on that. Like the guy clearly takes care of himself as a professional athlete. So
Yep.
yeah, would love to have him here. I do wonder if they go term or short term with him.
Mm. It'll be telling, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of like they're completely different players from completely different play styles, but this was the same time period when Kevin LeBanc got his 4-year deal around the same age, right? And then you really want to make sure that like when the fourth year of that deal, if he gets like a 4-year deal or whatever, that
You
he's
want to
not
make
going to
sure
just
that you're banking on the right guy. Sorry, I had to interrupt you with that.
nice pun. You just want to make sure that he's not going to be like a guy that's going to be like, God, why do we have to play this guy every night? Like,
Right.
because he makes $4.7 million or whatever.
Right.
You guys got to make sure he's still useful.
He's the guy. That's kind of my point. That I
Yeah.
still feel like I need a little more time myself. Maybe the Sharks don't think that. Maybe they're like, hey, this is the guy that we want for a long time. I don't know. Well, we're gonna find out. I think that will be interesting to kind of see what kind of figure that they land on, especially in term. I'm not the AAV. I'm not thinking about too much. I think more about the term, and I'll tell you a lot about I think what they think of Fabian, I guess. And if they give him like a 7-year contract, I'm not saying they will, but if they give him something like that, then they think this is a guy that we're going to win the Stanley Cup with.
Yeah.
Right. This guy's going to be on Macklin's side or on the team, and he's going to get better and better. And so that's if a contract like that happens. I do want to add one more thing to a point that you said that, Fabian, and this is a credit to my career, that in that trade for that Timo Meier trade, that Fabian seems specifically like a guy that they wanted. Granted, I'm sure they wanted Dawson Mercer more, some of the guys that were rumored that the Devils weren't letting go of, right? But in terms of, the Devils had a very, 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 very deep system, right? So of all the guys that the Devils made available, there still were impressive portfolio players, and they wanted Fabian, and Fabian has proven them right.
Yeah.
And so it's credit all around to both of them.
Absolutely. Again, another win for pro scouting from the Sharks. Yeah. Yeah, they need to call like Lou Lamoriello and get those like $7 million, 1.5 AAV contracts that he signs, Like, because Lou signs some crazy deals. Like, who you go to the Islanders, like there's just some ridiculously long contracts that have been signed through them. Anyway, something really long and really low value would be great. Always what you want for your contracts. All right, let's go with Blackwood. Also, good segue. Probably going to be in contract talks with the Colorado Avalanche soon.
Yeah, that's right.
He's been
but
good.
The playoffs are a different beast, though. I want to say, though.
Yeah, maybe they're waiting for that kind of thing.
Yeah. They should be. Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah. So anyway, he's had a pretty good run with Colorado since he's been traded. He's let in no more than 2 goals any start that he's had with.
I think he's 3-1. Is that right? That's what I saw.
He's 3-1 with a .931 save percentage. Not too shabby overall from Blackwood, and he looks pretty good against his former team a couple of nights ago, leading them to a 4-2 win. But you were mentioning that it makes a little bit more sense even like stylistically with the way that the Avalanche play, that Blackwood might fit there.
Yeah, just a couple of notes. And I know that we've left the Mackenzie Blackwood era, so we won't be talking much about him anymore. I do have actually, though, another tease for a story that I'm working on. I asked, Warsawski called Yaroslav Askarov after the Edmonton game. He called Askarov a Russian Blackwood. And I asked Askarov about that, had a great conversation with him about that. And so I have that story coming out over the holidays. So anyway, just another tease there. But in terms of Blackwood, I was thinking about actually that he is kind of a good match for the Avs because granted the Avs are a much better team than the Sharks, better in every area offensively and defensively, but they're still not a phenomenal defensive team. They're not a shutdown defensive team. They're a little bit run and gun, which makes sense when you have McKinnon and Carr and Rantanen and guys like that, right? And so maybe that's why Blackwood kind of fits with them. And here's an old school reference. I dropped this on somebody and it made sense to them, and it's a little bit too lofty because the comp is a Hall of Famer, but the Oilers in the 80s, they were running gun, and they had Grant Fuhr behind them. And Grant Fuhr, not the best save percentage, not the best goals against, but they knew that in a 5-3 game, run and gun, that he's the guy that they wanted back there to make a save in a close game. And not to say that Blackwood is a future Hall of Famer, if you're one of the great goalies of our time, but that there's shades of that with Colorado, that maybe that's what they saw in Blackwood in San Jose, because if there's anything that Blackwood did in San Jose, it's to fend off the hordes of the rush and mistakes and counterattacks all the time, right?
Yep.
And for the Avs, they have a powerful offense that can overcome their mistakes. But they can kind of make mistakes, though, because they have trust in their goalie behind them. And so I do wonder if that's one of the identifying factors why Blackwood fits with them. And I did want to add one more thing about Blackwood, too. I was thinking about in terms of just his fit with the Sharks and long term. And once you read the Askarov story, you're going to be a little wistful and be like, man, that would have been a great pairing for a long time. Once you hear what Askarov has to say about Blackwood. But anyway, though, I think, though, that I don't know what Blackwood was looking for AAV, but maybe it wasn't that much. But I think, though, if you're Mike Rear, though, the question more is term. And so I'm really curious the term that Blackwood signs for, no matter what happens in Colorado. Assuming that things go well in Colorado, not necessarily he wins the Stanley Cup, but things go well in Colorado and they make him their number one for the years to come. The term that he signs, because I think that when Mike talks about not wanting to spend too much money on goaltending, maybe he's thinking about Askarov, and Askarov Askarov's new contract starts next year. It's a 2-year contract. So end of 2027, the end of the 26-27 season, that you're going to have to re-up Askarov. And who is he at that point? Could he be one of the premier goalies in the world? He may well be. Honestly, he does have the talent for that. And so maybe that's what Mike is kind of thinking about. And so I don't know. Again, I'm very curious, though. I guess that's the summary of this segment. I'm very curious what Blackwood signs for eventually. And I think that will tell you a little bit. Blackwood just signed for like 2 years with the Avs, or a year, and the term isn't that much. It's like, oh man, that's like, we got a second round pick and we got Kovalenko, but that's a good fit. That term is a good fit for the Sharks. And Askarov's contract the next couple of years, which is I think $2 million AAV, which is not a lot. But anyway, that's just a thought there. So a couple thoughts.
I bet he gets like a 5x5. Just my
thoughts. Is that your kind of okay? If we don't know what's going to happen from now to, so you assuming he has a good playoff run or maybe even wins the Stanley Cup, that's your.
Yeah, I think it's enough money that a team, it's decent money. It's not amazing money for a goalie, but it's decently good. And it's
right.
It's not like $7 million where you're risking it.
I don't think Blackwood is seeing himself as my guess. I don't think Blackwood is seeing himself as, I'm Shesterkin. You got to give me. I got to go from 2.7 to 10 million. So yeah. So I think that your guess is probably, it wouldn't surprise me if that's in the range we're talking about if he has success in Colorado.
Yeah, because 5x5 is bad, but it's not like you're not going to tank the franchise if you have to somehow move that around or waive it or what have you. Because there's other goalies that were making $5 million and they had to do that, right? Like Jack Campbell was making $5 million. Who's the guy from Philly? Cal Peterson was making I think $4.5 million. Yeah. So it's around that number where you could still find a way to like finagle it away if you needed to.
Right, and you're not calling the guy a franchise goaltender, which I don't think that people think that Blackwood is at this point.
And it's enough money that it probably makes Blackwood happy too.
Sure.
I think that's probably what he gets. All right. The Sharks have lost very close games in the past 2 weeks. They've lost, I just want to recount, since December 7th, a 3-1, a 3-2, they won 4-3, a 4-3 loss, a 4-3 loss, 4-2, 3-2, and a 4-3 loss. So it's like within 1 or 2 goals and almost every single loss. For weeks, and that's really frustrating for a team and a fan. That fan being me. So yeah, I think We can talk about it, but there was some mention earlier on, like how did the Sharks get that like killer instinct? And I was watching the game today, and they were down by 2 at the
It's
very
going to
end of the
take years and
game.
years, guys.
I know,
I asked the
but
question, but yeah, but I
there
know the
was
answer. So
yeah. But anyway, they were down by 2 earlier or later on in the game today, and there was a moment there where it was like 4.5 minutes left, and I realized that like the puck kind of just like waltzes into the Vancouver zone, and nobody's forechecking. Like there's just no forecheck. There's just no like push. And I'm like, there's 4 minutes left in the game. Why is there not like everybody? I know it's probably just like a change or whatever, but it just felt like such a routine change that I was like, why is nobody like skating their ass off right now? Made me upset. That's the little I'm upset moment I wanted to get out there. But
okay.
they did a little bit of fight later on. They got a empty net goal and looked a little bit more, but it just felt like they had already given up the game, even though it was not over
No,
yet.
yeah, they did not give it the game. They played a good third period. Granted, Vancouver is score effects, whatever, right? Like
Sure.
they're not playing as aggressively. They're protecting a lead, but I think that what did I say? Well, it's actually not that different than what I think a couple weeks ago I was on with Ted Ramey, the Sharks that the build up, right. This was after the Washington win, and or maybe it was before the Washington win, and people were talking playoffs and all that stuff, right? And I think a question that was posed to me is, which Sharks is a real team? The one that started off season 0-7-2, or the one that I think since that point 0-7-2 to Washington, I think they went like 9-6-3 or something like that,
Something
right?
like that. Yeah, yeah.
And I said, and I think that I think I'll be shown. And I'm not saying anything remarkable. You look at the roster, like the Sharks are both of those teams. They're not a 9-6-3 team for an entire season. That's a playoff team, but they're also not a 0-7-2 team for an entire season either. They're both those teams. They have upgraded themselves from being a historically awful team to just being a normal bad team. And this
Yeah.
happens to normal bad teams. They're close in games, but they don't have that killer instinct. Or examples specifically from tonight's game, right? Like after Eklund scores that 5-on-3 goal there, right? The Sharks power play after that was awful.
Yeah.
Not just like a regular bad. It was awful. It was Keystone Cops bad. And these are like moments where, that first period, the Sharks are tied against Vancouver. They should have been up. And Vancouver could have, they had a power play to end that period. They could have been up too, but that's when I was like, oh man, that's so Sharks. Like
Yep.
they play a better period, but they're tied or they're down. And when the Sharks are better, then they're going to be able to jump on these opportunities. They're going to have a 3-0, 3-1 lead after a period like that. And then put the other team on their heels, take away the belief from the other team. The Sharks aren't good enough for that yet, though. The Sharks are at a point where last felt like anytime a team wanted to turn it on, they could against the Sharks. Sharks are a little better than that this year, but there's not that much better than that. A lot of it is, of course, all the elements that we talk about every week. Forwards are still young and raw. There are a lot of too many bottom six type forwards for at least for like a playoff caliber team. These bottom six forwards are important for the Sharks' competitiveness. I want to remind you, but in terms of the next Sharks playoff team, a lot of these guys won't be here probably. The defense is still not a NHL average defense. The goaltending between Blackwood being Askarov, there's a lot of promise there, but obviously Blackwood is gone. So, and Vanecek and Georgiev are trying to get back on track with their careers. So anyway, this is just what's going to happen. And so I think this losing streak to, I guess, broad strokes, and we'll talk about some individual players like Luke Kunin, 20 goal pace. We were on hat trick watch for Luke Kunin earlier this week, which I couldn't believe. And now we're on 20 goal watch for Luke Kunin. But
Heck yeah.
anyway, though, anyway,
Yeah.
though, just overall, though, that like, it's good that they keep competing. They're close. They're going to have some nice wins in the next second half of the season. It was really important. I think when they started off 0-7-2, I was worried not about the talent on the team, but that the psychological, the losing snowballs, and it just like we can't win, and so it gets really ugly. It becomes a really bad environment for Macklin, for Will Smith, and credit to them. They got it back on track. And I think they're where you want them to be, that these games, they're giving it their all. They're close. They're competitive. When the Oilers kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit, like the Sharks can kind of jump on them. That's another example. The Oilers actually started off that game super slow. The Sharks got the first 5 shots, I think, right? And against the Oilers were kind of asleep the first 10 minutes. A better team puts up a 2 spot quickly on the Oilers, just for example, right? But the Sharks aren't that team yet. So anyway,
Yeah.
Sharks are in the right place. And so 5-game losing streak, you don't love it, obviously. You want to see a few more wins. You want to pad your draft lottery status still. You're still in that place.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a hidden benefit, as we are getting competitive games that are also helping our draft lottery status.
Well, secretly, the reason to leave Askarov down, I think.
Yeah.
Or one of the reasons to leave Askarov in the AHL. But anyway, though,
we're getting Celebrini like points every night, which is, if you can get a Celebrini points, you can get competitive games and still lose. It's fine.
It's a much better product. I have no issue with. We're going to talk about different things, like Gaudreau on the first line a little bit, Will Smith on the fourth line a little bit, Luke Kunin promotion up, demotion to a fourth line.
Yeah,
all these things are just the overall mix of players that Mike has brought in has been super important for just making a product. I shouldn't say product, just making it competitive, making it a good environment for Macklin to grow up in. And I think that was really, really important this year. And Mike has pulled it off. I predict that this should last. I don't think that this sort of train is going to go completely off the tracks at any real point this season. Yep. I don't think so. At least rest of the season. And I think that this is the place that they should be in. They're not gonna go through this stretch of Edmonton, Vancouver. This is a crazy stretch of games too.
This is true.
The Jets, the Avs, the Oilers, the Canucks, Golden Knights coming up.
Yeah,
you want like a win or two,
teams.
But you're gonna lose most of these games, and so yeah,
like you had some winnable games, maybe Utah, but
right.
Yeah, not a there's Lightning, Panthers, Hurricanes, Capitals. God, they have been on a rough stretch.
They've actually played most of these teams pretty well. Florida, they were dominated. Edmonton, they were dominated. Tampa, they were dominated. So maybe not all of them, but goaltending kept them in Edmonton and Florida. And in the other games, they could have won. They could have beat Vancouver tonight. They could have beat Winnipeg, outplayed Winnipeg. They beat Washington. They could have beat Carolina. So, and then like I said, 2 of those games, the Florida, Edmonton, goaltending kept them in it. So,
yeah, it's just a little sad, but
you want like 1 W. You don't want like these losing streaks. You want 1 in the last 5. Guys feel better. Guys are in a better mood going to the holidays, and they earned it too. I should say that too. They played well enough to have a win or 2 in this last 5. Not good enough to win all 5 or whatever, but they played well enough. So credit to them.
Okay. Anybody want to highlight real quick from the last couple games?
Oh yeah.
Who you got?
Well, I know you like Mukhamadullin tonight. I agreed.
I did. I really liked his puck carrying tonight. He looked a little bit more comfortable in transition. He wasn't didn't make any glaring mistakes defensively that I could really tell. Maybe a few, but nothing terrible. More comfortable, and that's all I want. Actually, you know what? That's what I want for Christmas. Is Mukhamadullin. I'm spoiling it, but one of the things, not my main thing, but one of the things.
You're a greedy boy. Okay.
I want 2 things. I want 2 presents. Mukhamadullin more comfortable would be one of the things, and just to get him more acclimated to NHL time and being a solid NHL defender.
Yeah, the word that I actually asked Warsawski about him after the game. The story will be out soon, but Warsawski called them more assertive tonight, which is what I saw. Assertive with the puck, even assertive defensively. He pasted, I think it was Di Giuseppe was trying to exit. And that's not something you see as much with Mukhamadullin, but he has the frame to do it. So you don't need him to be Chris Pronger or whatever, right? That's not his game, but you want some physicality because at that frame, that he should be able to provide that at that size and to have that element at least sometimes. And so it's nice to see that there. Besides that, I think, yeah, I don't know if I have anything sweeping to say about the other guys. I think in general,
Sure.
there isn't any player. I'm looking at just the lineup tonight that I'm deeply unhappy with. I know that people dump on Ferraro and CC and Ruda. I did think Merrill did have a rough game tonight, but in general, though, there's unique guys like that just give it their all defensively. And if you replace them with a bunch of younger kids from the Barracuda, it's going to get ugly really really fast. It's going to look like last year. That's what I believe, and so I'm fine to have these guys there. Henry Thrun, got to give him some credit. I
Sure.
think he's been. I think that yeah, gotta sit down and talk to Henry about this. But this season has really been like really up, really down for Henry. I think part of it is that when he's down, he gets sat. Whereas last year, when he was down, the team had no other options. He was their young guy, so they kept playing him. And so maybe that's why it's more obvious this year. But he's had some real ups too, though, this year. And he's had some really good games. And so I think with him, obviously, it's about like any young player, it's about sort of finding that consistency. But it's nice to see some sort of some promise from him and some progress with him. And so I've liked him. Walman hurt or injured today. Henry is the guy that they give the promotion to play
True.
with Cody Ceci on the top pairing, and I think he deserves it. I think that
Yeah.
I think that he's not going to be a top pairing guy long term, but I like again he doesn't do like anything great, but if he is good in a lot of areas, then that makes overall very useful, impactful defenseman. I think that Ryan Warsawski said that he wants him to be more of a puck mover. I think too that Warsawski wants him to kind of think less, to to be more maybe decisive and assertive out there, which I think is important for defensemen. That even if you make mistakes, that you just you're not just kind of thinking about stuff too much because you look even worse usually. And so I think that's one thing that Ferraro does do well. I like this as
Yeah.
example is assertive. There are mistakes, but he goes for it and whatever the consequences. And so of course you want his success rate to be higher, and that's one of Mario's problems. But anyway, though, with Run, I see more of that in the last couple of weeks since he sat out, and so he's a guy that I've liked, and I'm curious to see how this tracks rest of the season. Obviously, there's a lot more competition too, and so maybe that's another thing that'll kind of he's got to be better than competition, so that's going to be another test for him.
I've liked Luke Condon's game.
There you go. Yeah.
No, I really have. I think
Wait for you to say
I think he's simplified his game a lot, and he's doing what he does best, which is shooting the puck. And
I think he's quicker too, like we talked about a lot. I think that's the big part of it. That's why he looks better. He just his injury, that he just is just like a half step, quarter step, whatever it is, quicker. And I want to add one thing that the Landry said about Kunin today that you can see in the story that I wrote. I asked Ty because coaches love him, but he sat the last couple of games, and he's a younger player. And while the coaches love his attitude and his grit and kind of what he represents as a player, right? Kind of a coach's favorite type, that he's young, so he's lost some consistency. And he had that problem last year in Dallas too. And I know that Pete loved Delandria, but same kind of thing though, that just night to night, maybe that kind of difference making agitation or whatever you want out of your fourth liner, that difference making disturbing wasn't consistent enough. And so I asked Ty about that, and I asked Ty, just looking around this locker room, who do you kind of admire in terms of the not getting too high, not getting too low approach, in terms of not getting too low when things aren't going well, and not getting too high when you pop in a couple goals or whatever, right? And that's a veteran attitude. And so he said Kunin. And so I thought that was cool that was sort of the guy that, because there's a lot of guys for him to kind of mention in the locker room that, guys that could pop up on his first thought, Tyler Toffoli, Barclay Goodrow, Mikhail Granlund, guys like that, right? And so I think Kunin being mentioned, like I said, I didn't prompt him, I didn't kind of push him, I didn't look over to Luke's locker room or Kunin's locker room. Hey.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's Sheng's guy on the Sounds Like Hockey Now podcast. No,
Yeah.
he that's the guy that he picked, and so I think that speaks to kind of how Luke carries himself on a night to night basis.
Sure.
I would say with Kunin that yeah, like his sort of, he is consistent, even if it's last year where you can say he was like consistently like kind of bad at times. It's just he's always trying to do the same things. There's not a lot of deviation, and just this year it's working more because I think he's a little bit quicker. But
Yeah, and a little
Belanger
bit
talked
the
about his
line
approach.
mates are a little
Yeah,
better too. Yeah.
but the approach is good though, and that's my point. That's what Ty was saying, that he admires Luke's approach.
Yeah. We were gonna mention Will Smith. We decided not to do a full Will Smith segment. I think maybe saving that for next week's podcast. If
I
the
also have
current...
another story that I'm actually. I know I promise a lot of stories. Sometimes I don't actually finish them.
Sure.
I chase them. They're good ideas. I talk to the players about it, and then sometimes I just run out of time. But I actually have a Will Smith story pretty much done, and it was going to come out, but a couple weeks ago, but then he got hurt. But I think it's such a non-story that he went to the fourth line for a game. I didn't even respond to most of the comments. He was not good in that game, the one that led to him going to the fourth line. And there's got to be some kind of bar of sort of, you can't just give a guy. People ask, why isn't Will Smith on your first or second line on the top power play? Because he's not close to earning that. And there's, once he earns that, he's going to be on there. Trust me, the Sharks want that to happen. They're watching for like the strong heartbeat for it. But I say one key sort of story that I worked on is, this is something that you and I have talked so much about, that okay, like maybe Will could have benefited from another year in college. Maybe he could have benefited from being AHL. But let's be real about his leverage. People always forget that. Let's be real about his leverage as an NCAA player, 4th overall pick. And as long as he is improving in the NHL, that's what we're looking for. If he's doing that, then that's a valid enough reason for him to stay up here. Even if you can kind of micro whatever, like focus, like, oh, maybe he'd be a little better if he was with a Barracuda, or maybe he'd be a little better if he's at Boston College now. Okay. But is he getting better? And I've talked with a lot of people, and I'll just say that the answer is yes. And that's what I see too. And I think that's what you see. And so he's not Macklin Celebrini. He never was. And so right now, I'm still very, very okay with having him up here. Sometimes he sits in the fourth line. Maybe he still has development days still where he sits out and back-to-backs or whatever. But I think I think it's fine. It's nothing. It's kind of like the nothing to see here kind of thing. So, and it's not Pedersen, Miller, or the dog in the fire. So I don't think there's anything to see here. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's just part of the peaks and valleys of Will Smith's rookie year. It's
normal rookie. Normal rookie.
Yeah, it's like 3 weeks ago, I think he was probably playing his best hockey in the NHL, and now he's not playing very good hockey. But it's it's a dip, and you want those peaks and valleys to be smaller and less severe over time, and that's what building expertise is all about, and it's going to be like this. And
I think Michkov is going through it right now, actually.
Yeah, he's been getting a little less ice time. He's putting up less points. It's literally
Tortorella
every
said
rookie.
it. I saw a quote from Tortorella. It's like, I think he was saying that even on the power play, like I think he was saying something to the effect of, we rely a lot on Matt Bay in the power play, and he's had a little less like juice or whatever the word was Tortorella used recently. So it happens.
So don't overreact. That's why we should probably just save it for next week's podcast if there was anything to talk about, but we might as well just mention it here. Yes, we've noticed that Will Smith has been getting less ice time and hasn't put up a ton of points, and stuff's going to happen.
When he has good games, he gets the ice time,
does.
though. And when he's not, then they kind of hide him a little bit. And it did kind of culminate with him being on a fourth line, but it's not like they left him there for like if they leave him there for like a month or something like that. Okay, then maybe that's not the best place for him to play 8 minutes a night and second power play unit, right? But he's still getting power play time, and then tonight he went up to the second line. So
yeah, and also in the middle of this whole cold streak, was just injured as well. So you never know what like kind of lingering thing happens with that too. So
yeah, that's fair too.
Yeah, this is probably going to be the most brutal schedule that he's ever experienced as a hockey player, and he was injured in the middle of it. Yeah, it's going to take time to get back up to speed. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Wow, we went through Hub so without spending 20 minutes talking about how good Macklin is.
I know. We briefly mentioned him.
How do we do this? How do we talk an hour?
Pretty consistently. Pretty consistent. Pretty awesome. That's all I got to say about Macklin.
Read my story, The Making of Macklin Celebrini.
I saw the headline tonight. I have not read it yet, but I saw the headline. I will read it at some point.
Just for the pictures, it's worth it.
Yeah, that is a very good smile. Okay, what do you? Let's wrap it up here.
Christmas segue here.
I already said one of my small presents that I would like the stocking stuffer that I want, which is the Mukhamadullin to be consistent and an AHLer for this year. Not like all the time. We can go down to the AHL and come back or whatever, but it's kind of what I want. It's just a consistent, more confident, more Mukhamadullin. That's what I want. What's your first one? Or I guess, what do you want for Christmas?
Well, I think just selfishly, I like where the Sharks are, even on this losing streak. I just want them to keep it up for the season. Where I don't. It's not even about specific players, but that players do pop, right? And whether it's Macklin or whether it's Will Smith or whether it's Mukhamadullin, or they call up a Gushin or Colin Graff or whatever, that they're just that consistent, like, oh wow, hey, this guy's got some ability. Hey, this guy too. And Askarov too, obviously. So I think that's the main thing that I'm looking for in terms of just it's going to be good for the good environment, and also too that it's better for me to cover too. And so hopefully it doesn't slip. I don't think it will. I guess it could during the deadline, depending on how much they kind of break apart this team. Well, that's a topic for another episode, of course. I would say in general, and kind of in my opinion, that well, no, I'll save that. That's just about like the Sharks many UFAs or whatever. We'll save that for another episode. So
fair.
Yeah.
I want either a first round pick at the deadline, or I want a a top 3 draft lottery pick. Like at the end of the draft lottery, whenever it's going to be May or whatever. That's what I want. And it's not. I'm gonna have to delay it because it's like a couple months. So I should get it because I have to wait 2 months or 5 months for my Christmas present.
That reminds me too. I was talking to Bob Stauffer. He's a big Oilers TV, I think, right? And he was telling me that there's a defenseman in 2026 that's like the kind of like gonna contend with Gavin McKenna for the number 1 spot. I don't remember the name, but but that might be something for Sharks fans to kind of look up. Obviously, we're very, very far away from the 2026 draft, and we've had many guys that like 2 years out, they're like, oh, this guy's going to be the guy, and then in 2 years he drops to the 3rd round or whatever, right? So that's happened before, but I just wanted to kind of I forget the name, but I'm sure you guys can look that up. So I think that's interesting. And I would say though, to add on, I guess a final thought about Mukhamadullin, right? That he is the guy I would say that if you were to point to one Sharks prospect, I would say that realistically can hit soon, that can be a big difference to the team. I guess that would be the guy that probably would be can make the most difference. like Will Smith hitting soon or Quentin Musty. Like realistically too, I'm not talking about like Brandon Swoboda figuring out that he's Jonathan Taves in the middle of World Juniors or anything crazy like that. But like,
Sure.
yeah, realistically, like what the Sharks need defense. That's really what's the number one thing between them and being a more competitive team. And so Mukhamadullin is the most talented NHL ready-ish defenseman in the Shark system, like by far, in my opinion. I know Cagnoni's had an amazing season, but I don't think he has quite as much talent, obviously, physically, but also too just the overall package that Mukhamadullin has. And so if he's a guy that can figure it out at some point this season where it just kind of clicks for him and he goes on that path of 1-2 last year, and right now he's obviously not close to there yet, but like I had a scout who NHL scout who loves him and compared him to Jay Bouwmeester. That's like the high end of his comparison. I don't know if it get quite that good because Jay was like a pseudo number one, excellent number two guy, and I don't know if McMillan's that good, but if you get anywhere close to that, though, that's exactly what the Sharks need on their team right now and next year and whatever. So that's kind of the most realistic thing that can really, I think, really change things for them.
Yeah, it's the thing that most immediately can change it too. Like a top 3 pick or a new first round draft pick or whatever is going to help, but it's going to help many years from now.
Down the line, and then
so
they
still need it, but I think Mukhamadullin, you're right, is like the immediate thing that we really, really want him to hit.
Yeah. I hope that they are like the 24th. They are like the 8th worst team this year, and they win the lottery, move up instead of being the worst team,
and then keeping the lottery pick.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to guess what you want as long as they win the lottery. It doesn't matter.
People are still cheering for wins now, which is nice.
Yeah, I do want the wins. Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, the negativity last year was kind of like.
All worked out in the end. We got Celebrini, and we get to talk about Celebrini every week for 20 minutes. I don't know. Anything else that you want for Christmas? A pony, Lexus, new TV, I don't know. New podcast mic, I don't know. Just trying to get a Christmas present out of you, man. Like, I don't know.
I don't know, man. Joking. I don't even think about it. Yeah.
I'm just joking.
I told you what I want professionally. So, also I more subs.
Yeah, more subscriptions.
More travel contributions. I'm gonna travel, so so I will travel.
All right. Well, it's been a fun 2024 with everybody, and we'll probably have our next show after the new year, I would imagine.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably so. Maybe before the new year. Who knows? But either way, we will be back with all of your Sharks content in the new year in 2025.
Actually, you know what? I did think of what I do want.
All right.
That I'm still trying to add sponsors to this show, to the website. So if anyone is interested, I don't think I've ever asked that on the show. So if anyone's interested in that, you know where to find me.
Yeah, we're going to do like a your name here, and we'll have like a little, or if you want a banner ad, like if you want to pay for a little banner ad, look at all this space we've got all around us on YouTube.
I just didn't say it's a really, really tough business. So I'm trying to beyond stay alive, thrive in it. And so, that would help.
All right, y'all. I hope you have a good week, and we will see you all next week. Bye.
Happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays,
Happy
everybody.
New Year. I want to welcome a very, very special guest, Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff. He is the man for prospects, for draft. He's been at Team USA selection camp. He's going to World Juniors in a few days from now. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me.
We wanted to have Stephen on because it's not as jam-packed with Sharks prospects for this year's World Juniors, but there are a few.
Sharks took all the guys.
Yeah, the Sharks took all the guys. They have two specific guys that are playing in the NHL that could have made this roster, but it does have a few interesting prospects to talk about and some omissions as well. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the 2025 draft eligibles, and some general impressions and a surprise bonus Celebrini question because we can't go a podcast without talking about Celebrini.
How good Celebrini is.
He's special, man. He's special. I remember watching him at that World Junior Camp last year in Oakville and just seeing him up close. It's like I've seen him in games and stuff like that, but watching him against the best players in that age group, there's a reason he's succeeding so well in the NHL and why I think he might be the Calder favorite.
Mm-hmm. That's it's actually a daily or not a weekly update on our podcast is when does he overtake Michkov
No,
for the Calder
I
odds?
said if he's healthy, we could talk about this at the end here, but if he's healthy, he's going to overtake Michkov by February.
By February.
Favorite, I mean.
Yeah, okay. I see that. I see it.
Let's start with Team USA. We're gonna go team by team, and then just a few other random questions in here. I want to just off the bat because it's kind of like the big question. Could you talk a little bit about the whole Quentin Musty saga? What contributed to him supposedly not even getting an invite to this camp, even if he wasn't injured, and he is out with a hand injury for the next couple of weeks?
So there's been conflicting stories. I know before he actually suffered his injury, there was talk about a week earlier that he was not going to be invited to camp. And it's part of it is, from my understanding, there's a lot of players that could do what he can do out there. Like you got Cole Eiserman, you've got Trevor Connolly, you've got a couple other players who've been in the U.S. national team development program cycle or have represented the Americans in other ways, like Connolly did last year. And, for as good of a player as Quentin Musty is, starting the season kind of watching and not playing definitely did not help his case there. And I know he had a good training camp. I know he looked good. A lot of fans were wondering if he was going to make the NHL right away, but it felt like I could kind of see where the talks were coming from. Like, yeah, you know what? Maybe he was a bit redundant and maybe he wasn't going to go out there. Like he's not a fourth-line player, but they have guys who play a fourth-line role really well, like Teddy Stiga, Brody Ziemer, Brendan Svoboda too. So it felt like it was going to be kind of on the inside out there, but you can't look at this and not say, well, he did snub the USA going to the program and everything to go play in the OHL. He's been on the other side of the border for the last couple of years. That has to play a role there, right? Because, at the same time, I thought last year's World Junior Summer Showcase was better than this most recent World Junior Summer Showcase, where he had the opportunity this past summer to kind of be that guy at camp, and he wasn't. He wasn't one of the better players out there. He was just fine. So I think for him, maybe not being explosive, not being like forcing his way into the lineup there didn't help. But then, at the same time, not playing at the start of the year definitely didn't help. And it seemed like you look at how many players they named. They named 28 players. You can bring 25 players. They're only cutting 3 guys. It was going to be tough for him to make it. And we know, I believe 2 of the cuts are coming on defense specifically, I believe. So again, it was going to be difficult there.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that we are recording this on Wednesday, December 18th. So a little bit before USA actually releases their roster. Just want to make everybody aware that's listening to this. I think all the other countries, they've released their roster, right? Except for USA.
So USA, yeah, they're finalizing theirs December 24th. I think Latvia and a couple other countries are going to make their final cuts around that time too. But yeah, for the most part, we kind of have an idea what every team looks like.
Okay. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Quentin. Just where is he? I guess this has obviously not been the leap forward, I guess, in his prospectum that he hoped, that the Sharks hoped, that all the fans hoped. Just where is he as a prospect right now from what you've seen this season?
Like before the injury, he was still on pace for something like well over 90 points, close to 100 points. Like they were still having a good year. For me, I want to see a player who does a bit more in his own zone because you see the goals. Last year he had over 40. This year was probably going to get 40 again. He's a good playmaker. He's very good in front of the net. I feel like I would like to see him be a bit more committed in his own zone, be that 200-foot player because, he's got the size. He's a smart player. Like he's got those abilities to go out there and be as effective as he possibly can. And I'm still high on him. I still think he's going to be a good player. I think that, a very, very, very smart player, not the greatest skater out there, but not really a detriment to him. But it still seems like a lot of this game is driven about how well he plays with the puck. So I still think I'm pretty happy with him. Sudbury has shipped out some pieces this heading into the season. Want to see how he can go out there and play. Feels like he's going to probably be traded. He probably won't be on the Sudbury Wolves in a few weeks, but we'll see. But at the same time, I'm still not too worried yet.
What had you heard? And you're based in Toronto, so you're very tapped into the OHL. What had you heard about his trade request?
There's a lot of quietness on this. I think the key thing here is people want to see how healthy he is. I know there were some fun people or some rumors like, oh, watch him get traded and suddenly his hand's all good and he's ready to play again. So
hey guys,
It's fine.
I don't think sabotaging
piano
your
fingers.
I don't think sabotaging your season before you turn pro is probably the way to go. So that's why I'm not really buying that one too much. But there should be a lot of interest in him. A lot of teams I don't have any specific teams that you link, but you look at a team like the Brampton Steelheads, a team that's got Porter Martone, Carson Rakoff. Like those are some pretty good players. What if they added Quentin Musty? That's another piece there, especially on the power play that could do a lot. Obviously, the London Knights are never done adding. They're always looking for players.
Forever. Yeah.
It's going to be pretty interesting to see kind of how they tackle that because he's a guy that every team wants because he's got that skill to be a game changer. He's an ankle breaker. He's, again, such good vision out there. So a lot to like. And so I guess we'll see.
But I also wonder too about his request earlier in the season that wasn't granted.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like they wanted to see how he could do. They wanted to go out there and maximize his value, and the injury doesn't help. So I wonder. I did ask someone like if he was still healthy, would he have been traded by now? A lot of teams a lot of people don't think so yet. A lot of people are looking at that and saying, they're trying to maximize their value. They're going to get good value from him no matter what. I don't feel like in the NHL or the OHL compared to the NHL, where if there's a public trade request, that lowers a player's value. That doesn't really happen in the OHL because winning is everything there for these teams, and teams are willing to trade 15 draft picks to get one guy. Again, I'm not too worried. Like they wanted to hold him on. I think in the best interest, he should have been playing from the start. He should have not been sitting and waiting. That only hurt him. Now that he was playing as good as he was when he's healthy, I think, again, teams are going to want to see how healthy he is. But from people I've talked to, not a lot of people thought he would have been traded at this point anyways.
Okay. But when's he supposed to be back?
I believe, I want to say it was right after the trade deadline, if I'm correct. Like sometime in late January, early February.
And so he could still be traded while injured and everything. Well, injured, I guess.
We'll see, because the thing about the World Junior players, when they're at the tournament, they can't be traded. But he obviously didn't make the World Junior, so different rules there. And we did see Cameron Allen, who was Washington Capitals prospect, who was just traded by Guelph to London for a lot more picks than I would trade for Cam Allen. But he was a guy that he didn't make Canada and was traded pretty shortly after.
He was a big name too, Cam Allen, right? Like he was supposedly going to be top 32 and then end up falling to 4th, 5th round, something like that.
At one point in the season, his draft year, he was a top 10 prospect. And some even thought maybe potential top 5, if not the best defenseman in that draft. And he just did not have a good year, a big step backwards. And then him playing at the U18s showed how poor of a season he had. And so I've watched a lot of him the last couple of years. He still knows how to move the puck. The confidence is there, but the giveaways are still a problem. And defensively, he still struggles. But I'm not very high on him right now.
Wanted to... I guess we should actually, before we ask about the 2025 draft and James Hagens, let's talk a little bit about Brandon Svoboda. Does he make this team is the first question. Second question is, why does he make this team? As a guy who doesn't really put up a lot of points, but does he fill a specific role for a World Juniors team?
I think from what I know, USA Hockey was really excited about what they saw from at the World Junior Summer Showcase as an energy guy. And I think that should help him get on this team. That was a long time ago, but he's still a guy that will go out there and if he's not scoring, he's still contributing. And the thing to keep in mind when evaluating prospects is as important as their game with the puck is, you obviously don't want a guy who doesn't touch the puck much. And when they do, they give the puck away. You want a guy who goes out there and plays very effectively without the puck because players play most of the game without the puck. So you want to go out there and be able to go and do as much as you possibly can at every area of the ice. In that week-long showcase in particular, and again, we're talking July and August, so a long time ago, but he really established himself as one of the better players in that showing because he was just working so hard. He was playing really good defensive hockey. He was on the penalty kill, and they do have a lot of guys like that. So if he doesn't make it, it could be because they just like someone like Kerry Terrence or Austin Bernovac or guys like that a bit more. Again, we're not expecting them to make any cuts until after that final pre-tournament game against Finland. But what we have seen is a guy that battles really hard. And watching him at training camp a couple days ago, you can only take so much, but that competitive nature, that ability to go out there and take up as much space in the ice was still there. So I think he does make this team, but it will be like in a 13th or 14th forward role. We're not talking about a guy who he might not even play every game. He might only get the starts against, the weaker teams like Latvia and Germany at the very least. But I do think that he does bring some value to the team, and that there's a reason they wanted him there in the first place and left off a couple other guys who are a bit more productive.
It reminds me of something that Ryan Warsofsky said, Sharks head coach, about his fourth line recently. And he said about his fourth line, just don't get scored on. And it's not just the Ryan Warsofsky thing. I think that all head coaches, that's basically what they want from their fourth line, to not get scored on, provide energy the other way. Sounds like Brandon is capable of doing that for Team USA. But Steven, wanted to ask you, what have you seen of Brandon this year at BU?
And again, a very competitive player, a guy that's not in a scoring role, but he's going out there and putting that work ethic in. And, that's the thing. You look at like Canada's roster for this, and I was at their camp last week, and the fact that they were cutting guys who are like 100-point players shows you how deep their scoring is. But the one thing I don't think they do as well is, having some defensive forwards, being as 2A as you need, or just going out there and making sure the puck doesn't go in the net. That's what the Americans are going to do really well in this tournament. And Savoda, we've just seen kind of from start to finish this year. It's a guy that knows his role. He's not going to be a goal scorer in the NHL. He's not going to be a point producer, but he's going to go out there and be a good 2A defensive forward at points, and he brings that energy. So a lot of what I saw at the World Junior Summer Showcase is kind of what we've been seeing this year.
One of the big headliners is James Hagens, who has been kind of, before the draft season began, was the presumed number one pick with some contenders. Do you think he still kind of maintains that likely number one overall pick status? And then what can we expect for him from this tournament? He had 22 points in 7 U18 games last year. So
right now, at least the scouts that I've been talking to, a lot of them are pinning Matthew Schaefer as the number one. But I say that, as a lot of the scouts I've talked to, I've gotten 4 different answers. And that's the thing. It's very wide open this year. Whether it be James Hagens, whether it be Porter Martone, Michael Misa, or Matthew Schaefer, they all are really good in their own ways. Like with Hagens, you're looking at a Jack Hughes style player. With Michael Misa, I'm not even sure a really good comparable, but a guy who scores a lot of goals. David Pastrnak, let's go with that. When it comes to Schaefer, there's some Cale Makar tendencies there. With Porter Martone, it's Matthew Tkachuk. So you combine all that stuff, and you're picking from some incredible players there. With Hagens, I think one thing that maybe has hurt him is that, NCAA doesn't play as much. And a lot of the teams that Boston College will play through the year, maybe not the best. Like, with all due respect to, Dartmouth and University of Maine, or even UMass, like maybe not the toughest competition, but at the same time, he's looking good in those games. He's been on a bit of a hot streak recently. A couple of, I think it's 3 of his last 6 or 7 games have been 2-point games. And we know that he's going to be on that top line with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. And great players, they'll make anyone look good. But what we've seen in the past couple of years, specifically with Will Smith, is you need a good center to kind of tie things together. And that's what we're seeing of James Hagens. Is he doesn't need to put points on the board to be effective. He's about as complete of a player as you could ask for at both ends of the ice. He is a bit bigger. He's listed as 5'11" now, and I think 178 pounds, which is just a slight bit bigger than he was a year ago. He's still a little undersized for a center, but I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue because that hockey brain is incredible. And we've seen him break records at the U17s. We saw him break records at the U18s. Just a guy that, no matter the competition, is always one of the best players on the ice. And this tournament in particular, I really do expect him to kind of push himself back into the eyes of a lot of people and say, yeah, this guy should be number one. And that game on December 31st, where he's going to play against Porter Martone and play Matthew Schaefer, will be a good test. Granted, Schaefer might even be a bit deeper in the lineup for Canada as a defenseman. And with Porter Martone, he's not going to be their primary goal scorer, but it's because they got a lot of other guys who could do it. It'll be slightly different roles, but what we're seeing with Hagens, or what we should see with Hagens, is a guy that can absolutely dominate games when he needs to.
One more final question about Team USA real quick. Are you Team Zeev or Team Dickinson in terms of your favorite defenseman from the last
on
round?
December 18th, 2 months ago.
On December 18th of 2024.
Not in the draft.
So Well, I think heading into the draft, if I'm correct, I want to say I had Dickinson ahead. It's been a while. I think
All
with
right. Yeah.
All right.
better defensively, I'm going to Zeev Buiam. A better overall impact in the game, I think it's Sam Dickinson. And you see the numbers, you see in everything he's doing this year. My one concern with him, too many games where I've noticed him in person where it just doesn't feel like he's one of the better guys on the ice. But then you go, it feels like he doesn't perform when I'm there.
Yep.
But then when I'm not there, he'll go out and put like 6 points on the board or something like that. So I'm his bad luck charm. I'll just say that.
Yeah, let's transition into Team Canada and start with Sam Dickinson in general. Do you think that him or Matthew Schaefer is going to have a bigger impact for Team Canada at this tournament? He's the older guy, but Schaefer could be the number 1 overall pick coming up.
I think with Schaefer, it looks like he's been skating on the top power play unit, which Dickinson is not expected to get power play time. It looks like Tanner Molendyk's going to be that other guy, which again shows you how good Canada's offensive defenseman could be. What I do expect from Schaefer is he and Oliver Bonk are probably going to stick together, the London Knights teammates, and they're going to get a lot of ice time together. We saw Dickinson kind of play with a bit of everybody at the 2 games against U Sports, which if you don't know kind of about like the U Sports level, it's not NCAA level hockey, but we're still talking about 24, 25-year-old players ready to go play in pro hockey next year. Not necessarily NHL. I don't think any of the guys pretty much ever go there from that this type of all-star team, but very good competition. And Dickinson handled himself really well, and Canada won both those games. And I think with him, he's going to get a lot of ice time. He's still a younger guy. Like, I know he's probably going to try and make a push to make the NHL next year, but if he's not, he could be the best defenseman in next year's tournament. So we'll see kind of what happens there. But the size, the two-way play, the speed, the skill, like he was on pace before joining the Canada's camp for like 40 goals this year, which he's a defenseman. It's crazy, but he does it without sacrificing his defensive play. I feel like he was a bit underrated last year. You look at what Zane Parekh was doing on a team that not as deep as the London Knights. I say that obviously Saginaw won the Memorial Cup, but let's be clear, London was the much better team in a full 7-game series. But when it comes to Dickinson, I love him. Yeah, when he goes to the NHL, he's going to be playing top 4 minutes right away because he can handle that. Very mature player. He's got that physicality, the size, everything you're looking for there. So much to like right there.
With Sam, I wonder because of course I see the points, they're very splashy, but I always I'm not as impressed by that at that level. So I wonder if Sam from the last draft has he changed the projection on him? Like, has he been so good? Is it just like kind of empty calorie points, or is there more to kind of his overall explosion this year? As like, is it an all around kind of improvement as a player in your eyes?
Not a huge improvement, but I was really high on him to start with last year. I think
Sure.
he's first in scoring on the London Knights. He's the best defenseman in the OHL this year. Like, so many things are pointing towards a guy that's just playing kind of like what we expected. I think last year we saw him in the playoffs, just a guy who could be a beast and be impossible to beat. And he's showing that more consistently this year, at least in the OHL, as long as I'm not there watching. But I'd say, yeah, like for me, I think it's been status quo, no major jump, but no fallback. It's still one of the best defensemen in the entire OHL. So if you haven't watched him, I say there's still a lot to like, and a guy that commands attention anytime he hits the ice. He's got good players to play with, like no question about it. Passing to Denver Barkey, passing to Easton Cowan, that will make things a bit easier for you. But when he's the one actually doing a lot of that play driving and playing all scenarios for the team, again, I'm really happy. That's a team that doesn't have very good goaltending. Like their starting goalie, Austin Elliott, bounced around multiple teams this year. He hasn't lost a game, but I think it's more him being a 20-year-old turning 21 in May type thing than this guy is going out there and being as important as he is. I think part of it is Dickinson and Bonk in particular are doing a lot in their own zone.
Has he, besides you being there, has he improved on his shortcomings?
Yeah, like it to me, I would say that while he was not particularly amazing in anything last year, I would say he was more well-rounded than a lot of the other guys out there. Like Zane Parekh was a bit difficult to watch in his own zone at points. He got better. That was something he needed to improve. He understood that and got better. For me, I didn't have as many issues with Dickinson. It was kind of like he didn't need to be the best, but as long as he was well-rounded, he was going to get everything done. I think the hockey sense has improved. He's making a little less risky plays and making more smart plays, and it's paying off. And I think he's, again, just an overall better passer. But I do think that the two-way game is as good as you're going to find from anybody on that level, and I'm not too worried about him. Very fast skater. Like, that's still a thing. He still knows how to move out there.
Yeah.
Matthew Schaefer. So the Sharks are kind of in a, they're rebuilding their defensive pipeline. They've got guys like Dickinson, who we mentioned a lot, Luca Cagnoni, but I think they're still looking for that number one overall D man coming up. I guess the bigger question is, does Schaefer go number one? And if the Sharks don't have it, can they even get Schaefer? Is that possible?
I think looking what the Sharks need, if Schaefer is on the board and they have a chance, you got to pick him. Yeah. Like, no question about it. You got to go out there and pick him. And I think it's because that's just a player that, not explosive numbers by any means, but let's just look at what he's had to deal with. His mother died last year. His billet mom died. He started the season with mono. Nothing seems to slow him down. We saw him at that CHL versus USA series where he was the best player on the ice. No question about it. Both those games, pure dominance. He had one of the best Hlinka Gretzky performances I've ever seen by a defenseman. And he's putting up really good numbers on the Erie Otters where, he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting out there, but he's looking really good. He doesn't even need to put points on the board to be effective. I actually thought he had a really good game before that Prospects Challenge when they lost 4-0 to Kitchen. I still thought he went out there and looked really good, and he was awesome in those final few games before leaving for camp. And Schaefer, unbelievable talent, man. The stuff he could do with the puck is great, so smart, and he's a number one defenseman in the NHL one day. Like a guy he will be number one on any team and probably a top 10 defenseman in the NHL quite quickly. He's one of those young guys that plays a really good modern game, very immature, again, having to go up for everything he's done so far, and hasn't slowed him down. So I think there's still more to unlock in his game, but I think right now you should be paying attention to him, Sharks fans, because he is a legitimate chance to go number one. And if he's still there at 4, you got to take him.
Is there a huge drop off in defense? It sounds like there is from Schaefer and the rest of the defensive class.
Yeah, this is kind of Schaefer's world here, I think. Yeah, you look at Logan Hensler, Wisconsin. I'm not super high on him. I do like Radim Murka, who's playing with Tri-City in the WHL right now, a very big defenseman. Doesn't put up a ton of points, but he's got the size and the smarts and very strong defensively. Jackson Smith's very good he's out of Tri-City. It's Murka. I forget which team he joined, the WHL. But either way, like, there's some really good defensemen out there that are solid, maybe second pairing guys, third pairing. But Schaefer, it's like no one's touching him this year.
Okay.
Seems like kind of a difference to last year's draft where there was a bunch of guys that are really, really good, and one or two of them might end up being number one defenseman in the NHL or top line guys. And this year it's maybe just like one guy and a bunch of other guys.
That's the thing. Yeah. Like this year's draft, it's very clear kind of who the star is. It's interesting though, because last year so much talk about maybe defensemen were going to take over the top 10, and there were still more forwards taken than
yeah, that was interesting. And then guys like Dickinson, who were like, oh yeah, he's going top 5, end up at 11.
Dickinson going at 11 and Bouillon going at 12 were just like, guys, some teams are going to be very, very disappointed with their own mistakes.
Yeah.
I will say, Columbus, I didn't love them picking Kane Lidstrom at number 3. He hasn't played any hockey yet this year, which doesn't really help.
Concerning, for sure. This young with the back injury and all that. Okay, so Team Canada, we're going to move on from them and go to Team Sweden, which it seems like the first time in a while that the Sharks are not sending a Swede. Like, I feel like we've had a good run of Swedes. We have a lot of Swedes on the team now, but we do have the brother of one William Eklund, Victor Eklund, who I think is the lone draft eligible for Team Sweden. Can you talk about his potential for that team, and where does he go, you think, in the draft? And does his brother's success at the NHL kind of keep him higher in the draft in any way?
I'd say no, because they're not very similar players. The one thing with Victor Eklund is that guy can shoot the puck, man, and he's very smart. Watching with the Summer Showcase, he was playing on the top power play unit. I will preface that by saying Sweden hasn't. Sweden didn't send their full lineup, like didn't send their best of the best, but it was because they were there participating in another tournament like a week after. But it was their better lineup than what they had. I'd say what really was good was just he's such a smart player. He knows he can shoot the puck. He knows he can pass the puck, and he's never often making the wrong decision. And you see the numbers he's putting up this year, on pace for like 30 points in the Allsvenskan. That's very, very hard to do for a draft eligible prospect. Now he is older. He is 18 because of his birthday being in October of 2006, but just a guy that with the puck, the stuff he's doing out there is incredible. And I think that he can go out there and be a top 6 player in the NHL. If the Sharks have an opportunity to pick him, go for it. I talked to Victor Eklund in the summer, and the thing that he was telling me was that he and his brother keep in touch. They will play, video games basically whenever they are both awake, and they can both possibly play together. Like they're still very close, and it would be awesome to see them both play together. But a guy that I think is definitely in the conversation to probably go 5th or 6th in this year's draft.
Oh, wow.
Not high as well. Interesting.
He's the best Swede. I know Anton Frundell not having a great season health-wise. He's been injured multiple times. He was just at the World Junior A Challenge, so kind of like a level lower than this, and he didn't necessarily look that great. He was just fine. I think almost all his points came in the very first game of the tournament. So kind of a quiet showing there, but I'd say, right now Eklund feels like the guy that's going to be the first Swede taken in a year that's not good for Swedish players.
Yeah.
And, go ahead, Jay.
Oh, he sounds a little bit like his brother, though, in the sense that William kind of shot up the draft during his draft year. At the beginning of the season was a little bit lower. That's what I was hearing about Victor maybe over the summer, that, okay, yeah, maybe first round, but we're not talking top 10. So that's impressive. And so he might actually beat his brother. His brother was the 7th pick, and so he might be ahead of his brother. Feather in his cap.
We'll see. It's definitely a good argument there. The speedy 2-way guy who loves to shoot the puck. There's a lot to like there.
That kind of a compliment to his brother too, who's more of a playmaker. Does have a developing shot, but I wonder if he looked at his brother and, you know what, I could get a better shot than you.
He had more time, to think it through.
Yeah, exactly. So the 2, I guess, eligible Swedes that the Sharks have were Leo Salin-Wallenius and Axel Landon, who was a draft pick from 2 drafts ago.
Yeah,
both were eligible, both defensemen, but were they kind of long shots to make this roster, you think?
Yeah, with Landon, it was kind of a thing where even though he was an older player, they had some better older players. Like, that's the thing. The group that the Swedes are bringing defensively might be one of the better defensive groups in this tournament. And
okay.
Axel Sandy and Pellet. Well, it seems to be just a trending story of this group. You look at the Four Nations Faceoff roster and you see, they know how to develop their defensemen. I think, for me, Axel Sandin Pellikka might be one of the best players in the entire tournament, the Detroit Red Wings prospect. Tom Wielander's very good. Axel Hertig, Theo Lindstein. Like, those are some pretty good players who could do so much at both ends. I do think that the other 2 drafted prospects, and Rasmus Bergqvist, a Habs prospect, and Vigil Gustafsson, very good in their own zone. So it felt like there was going to be a bit of a tougher road there. Interesting that, for as good as Wallenius can be, that again, there was no camp, but I still thought the fact that, Gustafsson, a 4th rounder or 3rd rounder this past year, was taken over him. I think they were looking at as more of a role situation. Next year, I think Wallenius could be a top pairing defenseman for Sweden. But that's
it seems like they're going to be losing
a lot of
competition.
A lot of competition. Yeah.
ASP and Willander and Lindstein will be not eligible next year. Is that right?
I believe they're only could only bring back one guy, and that being Gustafsson.
Wow,
a lot of turnover.
Interesting. Our last, actually, no, we have 2 more prospects to talk about for the Sharks, but next one is Kasper Halttunen, who he's kind of had an interesting year. He had some AHL experience. He was with the Sharks for a long time, at least on paper, and then he got injured and then was eventually sent back to the OHL. But last year he was one of the better forwards from Team Finland, if I can remember right. He had 6 points. Do you think he's got the ability to lead the kind of an older player coming in?
I do. This Finnish team is maybe not as deep up front as we've seen in the last couple of years. Konsolanius is good. Emil Hemming is great. Jesse Nurmi, some players like that. But for me, we're looking at him being the number 1 power play guy. I expect something like probably 10 points, I'm going to go and say he's got 7 goals and 3 assists. Let's go with that. He's playing in Group A. That's going to be difficult though. Like they're going to be playing against Canada and USA. So most of his points are going to have to come against Germany and Latvia. But I think when it comes to Canada and USA, like those are games that Finland's not getting a ton of credit for heading into the tournament, but probably should. It's still a Finnish team that has a lot of experience playing together. A lot of guys that have played at the U18 level the last couple of years. The results have been good, 2 quarterfinal losses, but still there's that baked in chemistry there. When it comes to Halton, and one of my favorite prospects because he just blasts that puck. Like I'm surprised he doesn't break the glass more.
Or pucks more.
Yeah, he goes out there and crushes guys. Like his game is about brute force. And I think last year he got a bit cocky. And we saw that in that bronze medal game where you saw him taunting the Czechs. And the Czechs came back and won that game in the bronze, and Finland lost. And Alton and Cam play with a bit of an edge out there. We saw him take a couple of penalties that were a bit like, okay, man, probably shouldn't have done that. But for the most part, when he's on his game, very few guys know what to do with the puck as well as he does, and I do expect him to be one of Finland's better players.
Have you seen growth in his game this year? That experience with the Barracuda maybe rub off on him? Now he's back with the Knights.
It felt like there was some consistency issues with him. You look at him, there's been a few games where they go out there, score 4, 5, 6 goals, and he's not doing a whole lot. But he's still getting a lot of shots on net. You're still looking for that. Like he's had games of 9 shots, 8 shots. For me, I just want to see some, not just consistency on the score sheet, but just overall, like going from the AHL to the OHL, now the World Juniors. Like this reminds me a little bit of what we saw from Shane Wright in his draft year. Different style players completely, but Shane Wright makes the Kraken, doesn't play a lot, gets sent down to the AHL, goes to Canada's camp, and then he goes to the OHL. Like that was a lot of different environments and a lot of different roles for him to kind of play in. So I'm hoping with Halton and like this tournament kind of helps like unlock his potential. And then he goes back, he plays some very good hockey in London, but it's still a deep team. It's still a lot of talent to go out there and try to beat on the score sheet and beat opportunity wise. But I think that we're still seeing a guy that's playing to his strengths out there. I want him to be a better skater. We haven't seen a ton of improvement, and that's what makes me a little worried that he might be kind of viewed as a power play merchant at some point. But with the puck, he's great. So it's still the stuff away from the puck we want to see.
Our last Sharks prospect, Christian Kirsch of the Team Switzerland, which you off cam kind of said might be one of the worst Team Swiss teams in a while.
You said that off camera, Keegan.
I know.
And
but
it's true.
it might still be true. What do you kind of expect from Christian Kirsch? Is he the starting goaltender for this team, or is that Huey's job, or what are we looking at for him?
So QA is the returning guy. So I feel like we're going to see kind of the pre-tournament that just whoever's better takes it. I talked to some people in Switzerland that are kind of looking in the same way. It's like, this guy he's been our starter. He's played for us at different levels, but Kirsch was at one point potentially one of the top goalie prospects for the 2024 draft, and he fell a lot. And part of that was just didn't play very well in a lot of cases. Great numbers last year in the Swiss U20 League. With all due respect to the Swiss U20 League, it's not very good hockey. So there is that. We got to keep that in my mind there. I think that we've seen him on the international stage not play well. And last year at the U18s, he had a terrible first game against Kazakhstan, a team that should have not been close to competing with Switzerland on paper there. And so we've seen some up and down hockey, but what we are seeing is a guy that's putting up really good numbers in the NAHL for someone who's facing 40-something shots. And that seemed like a calculated move. He could have easily gone to the USHL, maybe had some better guys to play with out there, but going to the NAHL, he's had an opportunity to face a ton of shots and get very busy and try to rebound from there. If he's going to play for the Sharks anytime soon, he got to get used to that. Obviously, we're not expecting him to be in the NHL or anytime soon, but still, like the reps there are important, and being able to go out there and be very good. Part of the issue was he got called up to Green Bay and had a terrible first game this year in the USHL. So I'm not really high on him. That's kind of part of the issue. Goaltending is not a strength for this team. They've got guys they know that have played at international levels and key moments for them in both Huey and Kirsch, but I think it's really close on who gets the starting job, and I think it's just going to be who looks better in the pre-tournament.
And then not to, put down Team Switzerland anymore, but what makes this team kind of weaker than other teams from prior years?
Their most skilled player might be a 2009 born forward.
Oh wow.
Wow. Okay, that's the math on that.
What's his name? Who's that?
It's the brother of their goalie Elijah Nushinwander is the goalie. His brother, I forget his name. Jonah, I think it is Jonah. So this guy's like 6'3". I believe he was a late add to the camp roster.
Oh wow!
But he was, and I'm not even 100% sure he'll make the team. But watching him play, a 6'3" guy, who's 15 years old, who's already played on the top level in Switzerland, and didn't necessarily look out of place. He didn't play a ton of minutes right away, but he started all of a sudden playing 14, 15, 16 minutes in the last couple of games. So good for him. But there's just no guy out there I'm looking at and saying, that's the guy who's going to bring in and start scoring goals. And that's a problem. And that's been an issue for them in the last couple of years. The one thing the Swiss have been getting better at is working their tails off. They kind of look reviewed as like a Finland light. Never the most skilled team, but they're going to work hard. They're going to hit hard and defend well. They kind of do that, just not as well. So that's kind of the Switzerland identity is we're there. They're not going to be relegated, but they're not going to go out there and get out of the quarterfinals.
Yeah, Jonah Nushinwander, if that's how I'm saying that right, Nushinwander. He is a 2027 draft eligible, so 3 more draft classes away, 25, 26, 27.
If you want to feel old, I was at the Whippy Silver Stick tournament a couple weeks ago, which is OHL draft eligible players, and it was for 2009s and 2010s. We had David Leguan's son, Gary Roberts' son, Barrett Jackman. So I don't know if it's a son or if it's like a nephew or some case for Barrett Jackman's. Someone related to him, Nikolai Kulemin's kid. Nikolai Kulemin tried to play in the NHL this year, just for reference.
I remember that.
Pretty recent name for sure.
So, for a guy who we thought was gone and then just tries to make an appearance, pretty old and not as good. But those are the names we're starting to see kind of on the radar for NHL teams the next couple of years.
And thank you so much for talking with us. We have 2 more quick questions, and actually we're done with the World Juniors talk for now. But thank you for spending the time to talk with us. Any non-World Junior Sharks prospects that you can think of this year that have caught your eye?
Luca Cagnoni is.
Luca Cagnoni.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Are you surprised by how quickly he transitioned? Just the numbers have transitioned over from WHL to AHL.
Yeah, for me, I think with him it was a very skilled defenseman, but how good was that size going to be? And I think that was a concern, but so far it obviously hasn't seemed to really bother him at all. Oh man, I like an Eric Polkamp's game. A guy who's a solid defenseman, probably nothing more than a third pairing defenseman in the NHL if he makes it, but I think he's very good defensively and he's putting up some good numbers this year. So I'm liking what he's doing.
You can rip the puck too.
Oh yeah, he can. It's funny because I remember watching him in the USHL and that 2021-2 season. Couldn't do anything with the puck. He started to figure it out. I don't think he's going to put up points in the NHL, but he's got that ability that you can put him up a little higher. But the defensive game is there, and that's what you're looking for. Because you can't forget, he is a defenseman, and it feels like a lot of defensemen forget how to play defense.
Oh yeah. All right, our last question. This is the most important one.
The hot take.
Bedard. This has kind of been a topic that people have talked about. Jeff Merrick and Greg Wyshynski had a podcast, I think, today on this topic, or at least partially on this topic. But Bedard or Celebrini, who are you picking for your franchise going forward? Who do you want to build the franchise around?
I think Bedard is the more skilled player.
Okay.
But he's not the more complete player.
Yeah.
I still am going to pick the money on the skill, but it's really close, man. It's really close. Like with Celebrini, I would say that what he's doing this year in San Jose is more impressive than what we saw from Bedard last year. And to play with Bedard, when he got hurt, he was in the midst of the season. He had figured kind of things how to play. It wouldn't be too hard for him to adjust. For Celebrini, he plays one NHL game, gets hurt, and then comes back and is immediately good. I wouldn't have been surprised if he went 5 or 6 games without getting a point. But for him to make the impact he did right away, to me, I think his rookie season is more impressive. I think Bedard's the more skilled player, and I'm going with skill. But that's not a knock on Celebrini. He's the better two-way player. No question about it. I'll also give a shout-out. I want to give one shout-out to a guy who's not exactly a prospect these days, but Joe Thornton, the guy with the great beard, who's going to be helping to lead Canada.
Not
at the
exactly a
Spengler Cup
prospect.
this year. No, it's been a few years since he's been a prospect, but it'll be interesting to see kind of now that he's as like a co-manager for the Canada Spengler Cup team. Interesting to see what his future in hockey looks like.
Sure.
Yeah, Vibe director. That's his current role with the Sharks, is director of vibes.
I gotta say, the Spengler Cup is like probably the event I like the most in hockey, more than the World Juniors.
Really?
And watching him play for Davos was special. You can kind of see I have a yellow jersey right there. That is my HC Davos Spengler Cup jersey. Like I'm a massive Spengler Cup fan.
Cool.
And watching Thornton and Rick Nash and a couple of those other guys, Patrick Kane, go out there and play for Davos was like the coolest thing.
I love it. This is some throwback talk of Joe Thornton. Did not
but you
expect
thought to talk about on a prospect show. You probably expect to talk about Joe Thornton, right? Hey, how about Patrick Marleau?
Yeah.
Oh, also I did see. I saw a guy who had 2 Vezina Toskala jerseys recently. Both Leafs.
Oh, that's
jerseys,
very impressive.
But,
both
Leafs.
Leafs, though. Okay.
but some guy decided he needed multiple Vezina Toskala jerseys.
Probably
Well,
Vezina
probably got
Toskala.
him on sale somewhere. So.
Yeah, buy one get one.
Oh,
I only ever
like
think of that.
2009 or something like that. But
Like I know he was a good Shark and he had some good good career overall. I only ever think of that
that
one long
trade led
goal
to a little
that
bit
he had
more.
from. Yeah.
Did you know the story about how he went to? Oh, I forget which country. He went to. We went to a country and played in like not at the Asian League, but basically like it was like a small league out there, and he played forward for a little bit to end his career.
That's
Oh,
cool.
really?
Like him and Johnny
That's what
Ozuya
I've ever
did that.
seen.
Oh, do you? Two guys that I
Yeah.
would never say you're going to play forward on a team.
Yeah, well, see, the details of it are who knows, but it still amazes me that at one point an NHL team had Bakov, Vezina Toskala, and Mika Kiprusoff as their 3 goals.
No, it is very impressive. Yeah.
I had that discussion with someone a couple days ago, and it's like, how in the world did the Sharks figure that out? How did they get that good goaltending?
Well, part of
Yeah.
it is Warren Strelo, the late great Warren Strelo, the goaltending coach. I think that was a big piece there. But also, though, we'll have to check in on this Bedard Celebrini question because it sounds like 40 games later you might have a different answer. So
I'm still going on skill, but I think again, like I've said, Celebrini's.
It's tough because I feel like during the draft year you watched Bedard and there were things that Bedard was doing that I was like, there's nobody in the world who can do what he's doing right now, like other than McDavid, etc. But like it's just felt so ridiculously dominant. But they were playing in different systems, right? NCAA versus the CHL. So I don't know.
Yeah, with Bedard, like if the NHL or the CHL, USHL, NCAA, whatever you call it, the kind of the new rules worked out, like Bedard probably would have gone out there and chased records in the NCAA if that was around for him. So it's hard to kind of compare because they never played in the same level, and they're different style players. But
Yeah.
again, I'm picking the guy who could be a game changer over a guy who can also be a game changer.
All right. Steven, anything else that you want to plug or mention before we let you go?
I'll be doing a lot of features and stuff during the tournament, before the tournament, and doing previews on every single team. I still have to write about Team Kazakhstan. That's going to be a fun adventure to find out what's going on there. But otherwise than that, it's a good time for hockey. Watch the World Juniors, watch the Spengler Cup even before that. Although for you guys, it might be a little early, especially that 3 a.m. championship game.
yeah.
Just a touch.
Yeah.
Well, Steven, thank you so much for the time, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. Anytime, guys.
Thanks, Steven.
And check out Steven's work also, Daily Faceoff, like we said, but S. Ellis Hockey. Check out all his Spengler Cup and his World Juniors coverage.